Here we come, blue and white, and we're looking good. You'll be in for a fight, and we fight pretty good. Getting goals is our job, and we get goals good. Looking good, we are Carlisle United.
Carlisle United, the team that's on the ball. Carlisle United, the team for one and all. You're looking good, and we're with you all the way. You'll hear us singing every time you play.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Brunton Bugle, and for the final time this season we're going to be previewing a game. We're going to be looking at the last game of the campaign against Walsall, and as usual it's your place for finding out all you need to know about Carlisle United. From Paul Furwell to Tom Tyrwell and Johnny Evans to Mark Ellis, we've got it covered. In today's episode, as I've mentioned already, we're going to be looking back on the bonkers 3-2 win over Leyton Orient at the weekend, previewing United's final game of the season against Walsall at Brunton Park, discussing your suggestions on how the club could improve fan experience at Brunton Park next season, and there'll also be a news update and a roundup of what ex-Blues have been getting up to. And I'm joined on this episode, as usual, by one of my co-hosts, and it's Dan McLennan. Dan, how's it going, mate?
Yeah, not bad. I wasn't far off with my 3-all at Orient last week, was it?
No. We both went for that, didn't we? So I can't remember who went for goal scorers, but I mean, Zanzara let us down very early on in that one.
Yeah,
there you go. We'll get into that in a minute. But can you guess the link from the four players?
Off the top of my head, no, but leave it with me.
I think you really struggled to get it. Do you want me to tell you?
Yeah, it's an obscure one, isn't it?
They've all scored goals on the last day of a regular season.
Ah, right.
So Paul Furwell scored against Millwall in that famous 2-0 win. Tom Tyrwell scored at the end of the 2011-12 season. I think it was his last game for the club, actually, wasn't it? I think he left at the end of that season. Johnny Evans, back in the 60s, he scored a goal on the last game of the campaign. And Mark Ellis scored in Keith Curle's last game in charge against Newport. It was a 1-1 draw.
Yeah.
There you go. It's interesting. When I was looking it up, I was looking for names of players who scored on the last day of the season. I didn't realise from when Jimmy Glass scored that famous goal at the very end of the 98-99 season, we didn't score a goal in a last game of the season, a regular game of the season that is, until 2008 when Scott Dobie scored against Bournemouth in a 1-1 draw.
That's so Carlisle United, isn't it?
Well, looking back at it, there's long periods where we don't score the last game of the season. I'm not trying to dampen hopes for this weekend's game, but we generally don't do that well when it's a final game of the season, from experience.
Yeah, especially if there's nothing to play for.
Indeed. Well, I mean, the only one recently I can think of where we did was the 3-3 draw against Hartlepool when
that was a bizarre game, wasn't it?
Well, we 3-0 up at half time, weren't we?
Yeah.
Ended up drawing 3-3, but there you go. Let's go on to the news then, Dan. A little bit of news here that broke just after we recorded last week, didn't it? It was one of those ones we reported on other contract news, but this bit came out just afterwards. It's the news that the 5 remaining first-year pros at the club will not be having their contracts extended beyond the end of this season. So that's Charlie Birch, Charlie Barnes, Tom Wilson, Liam Lightfoot and Jamie Armstrong. They've all been informed that they will not be kept on when their contracts expire in June. I think it's probably fair to say circumstances have very much been against these 5 lads this season, haven't they?
Yeah, I did see just before we started recording in their newspaper article, Kiosk described them as victims. I think that's a bit over the top, but several of them were on loan to Kendall, whose obviously season wrapped up pretty quickly, and I
think Wilson was injured and didn't get a chance to go to Kendall.
Yeah,
and then
obviously Armstrong's been out for the second half of the season, hasn't he? So
they've just been a bit unlucky, haven't they? And I'd imagine that the young lads who probably get deals at places like your Kendalls and your Workingtons, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
Good luck to them for next season. The other big bit of news, obviously, there's 2 bits of news that came out. But first, I'll skip ahead here. I'll go to the second bit I've got down here, Dan, which is that United have come second in the EFL and Premier League fan engagement table. I think is it the second year in a row we've become that high or something like that? I think.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Yeah. So basically, there's this independent group puts together a fan engagement table based on, I think, 4 different categories, isn't it? And United have come second, only behind Exeter City, who are a fan-owned club, so it's logical that they would be good at engagement. I know some people are scoffed at this, but I think it's a good sign, isn't it, of the work that particularly CUSG are doing, aren't they, and getting fans an involvement in the club.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've seen in the last 3 or 4 years, the club are certainly far more open to dialogue than they possibly were previously. A little exclusive that should be announced by the time this comes out. There is to be a top table forum coming up in a week's time. More details will be on the official site, etc. In the well, hopefully by the time this is out, but it'll be a chance for fans to put their questions to the various owners and movers and shakers at the club, and that's going to be done via online streaming, obviously due to COVID. I'm actually going to be there to ensure that questions do get asked. I'm one of the question masters for the evening. So when that comes out, it's your chance to ask your question and follow the details in the article, which will tell you how to get your questions asked.
Yeah, it should be good because obviously it's been a difficult one this year in terms of trying to arrange something like that, hasn't it? It's been quite a challenge actually, and I think the big thing in terms of engagement is it's kind of weird that people berated the custodians, to give them the name, for the way they've engaged people. They've actually engaged with people better by taking a step back and letting the people who do the day-to-day running the club take on the fans' questions. And actually, we've learnt a lot more about the club as a result, really. The only one big issue is the ongoing issue about the succession in the ownership, isn't there? But that's one that we suspect we might get a few more answers on that in the future. I don't know if it's near future or maybe a little bit more distant, but I think we're probably going to find out more about that soon, would you say?
I would like to think so. You know, there's light, I would call it light suggestion that something is possibly in the background, but until we hear something, who knows? Yeah.
Well, let's move on to the last bit of news then, Dan, and this is quite the big one, isn't it? It's the financial results for the 2019-20 season, and it looks fairly positive, doesn't it? So they published the results for the last season, and Chief Executive Nigel Clibbins has confirmed that the club will make a profit in excess of $750,000 after the impact of coronavirus. Now, let's not get excited about that and think there's $750,000 in the bank there to spend on players or something like that. That's not the way it works, is it, Dan? It's a lot more complicated than that. Me and you, it's above our pay station, isn't it, in terms of how finances work?
And also, we need to remember that this is only to June 2020,
yes,
which was the original cessation of football and the very first lockdown period. So it's none of this covers the season that's just about to end.
Yeah, there's a lot of other interesting stuff covered by Clubbo this week on the official site, wasn't there? I mean, particularly how the club has coped this season with the financial impact of no fans at games. The signs are pretty promising. I think compared against a lot of clubs, especially, it sounds like we've basically got ourselves in shape so that if fans are allowed back next season, touch wood, we are in a position where we might be a lot better off than most clubs around us, won't we?
Yeah, that certainly seems to be the sort of the picture when you read it all. We've always thought this was likely due to transfer incomes, obviously. I mean, in the 1920 there was income of 1.1 million. Obviously, the bulk of that would have been Branthwaite up front, which was rumoured to be around 800,000.
Yeah, I think you might have had a bit from McCarron, a bit from Hallam Hope as well.
Hallam Hope will have been shekels, Yeah. But McCarron and Galloway were a little bit from Leeds. Obviously, it says that not all of that cash was received in the year. I think that possibly alludes to the Leeds one, because if memory serves me right, I think it took a little bit longer to come through.
Yeah, and that was based on them getting promotion to the Premier League, wasn't it?
Yeah, but what you need to remember as well is that this certainly, some of the Branthwaite add-ons will possibly have come through in the next set of accounts, which won't be out for a year.
And there's one from Henderson as well.
Yeah. Henderson and Cosgrove, the sell-on for Cosgrove. But Derek McKinney's at Aberdeen was adamant wasn't there, but I have been personally told that there is one by the person who put it in the deal. So, unlucky lads.
There you go. I mean, let's pick up a few of the bullet points out there. Obviously, you mentioned there that the profit after tax in excess of 750,000. Headline turnover is 4.5 million, which is the highest income since before 2015, and that's partly due to player transfer income, isn't it? Which you've mentioned just then is around about 1.1 million. Not all of that cash will be received in the year. Did suffer a reduction in normal recurring income of 345,000 due to the coronavirus, and this would have been far higher, but not for donations in lieu of refunds from fans and businesses. I mean, fantastic to see the way the fans and local businesses supported the club in that way. I'm sure me and you are both involved in that in our little bay. 361,000 of income was received from the coronavirus job retention scheme to protect jobs, and no jobs were lost due to coronavirus. Net assets 4.9 million at 30th of June 2020. Cash in hand at that point was about 500,000 as well, which obviously was important money heading into this current season. I mean, vital. It means we've not had to go begging for loans, have we, in terms of paying players' wages, which is an important thing there. Total debt is 3 million, including a new 120,000 short-term loan from the EFL. Not a massive difference there.
That's peanuts, really, isn't it? 120 grand.
Well, we've been talking with some about this recently when they're saying like it's not unusual for a club to have a debt just sitting there, not moving. I mean, big clubs have it. Chelsea have got huge debt sitting there. Nothing happens with them. It's what kind of debts they are, and we're lucky in the kind of debts we've got at the moment, really. No cash advances or repayments from EWM this year. 2.25 million of capital and interest due at the 30th of June 2020. That's not due to pay them. That's the amount that's sitting there, basically. That's what it means by due. Yeah,
and I do wonder if we're coming up towards June again. I wonder if there's maybe going to be some sort of, not a statement, but certainly an acknowledgement of what's going to happen with that going forward. That's maybe what's being alluded to with stuff going on in the background, because as we know, the debt is now officially with is it Pure Pay Retail Limited?
Yeah, it's essentially the people who were involved at EDU are almost protecting it, really, aren't they?
It's paper shuffling, isn't it?
Yes, basically. That's, well, in our technical terminology, Dan, yes, it is. But yeah, it's going to be interesting, isn't it, to see what happens over the next few months. And Nigel made some really interesting comments in the CUSG minutes as well, didn't he, about one of the main aims of them is just to get the balance sheet in a good shape, really, so that the kind of people who are interested in buying the club are not vultures, not people who are coming in and thinking I can strip this and just bomb it off and not worry about the debt. It's people, put it in a good shape so hopefully good people will get involved in it. That's the aim, you'd hope. But there you go. Right, let's move on to the match review section then, Dan. So yeah, we're looking back on the weekend win over Leyton Orient. It was Leyton Orient 2, Carl United 3. Goals from Mellish, Alessandra penalty, and George Tanner with a injury time winner. This was a really strange contest between two sides, battling just to finish in the top 10, basically.
It was a battle for 10th place, wasn't it?
Yeah, we've essentially guaranteed that, and chances of finishing 9th are pretty slim as well, aren't they?
Yeah, I think we'd have to win about 5-0, and is it Salford would have to lose 5-0?
Yeah, so it's not going to happen, is it? We can't finish lower than 10th now, so we're pretty much finishing where we're going to be. It was a topsy-turvy game at Brisbane Road. Basically, the result gives us mathematical certainty that we couldn't get into the playoffs, essentially. That was what the result did. Beach stuck with generally his strongest possible 11 for the game, resisting the opportunity to give fringe players a run out. I mean, straight into it, Dan, it's just a stupid game of football. I mean, they said this on the radio. Chris Lumsden was getting so annoyed about it, how ridiculous the game was.
It was a typical sort of end of season, not really anything to play for. There's not even a word to describe it, is there? It was just crazy.
I couldn't work out if I enjoyed it or not. That's the weird thing about it. I was watching, I was like...
It was very Carlisle United.
Looking at here, the stats here, we had 23 shots and 7 on target. And yeah, I still felt a little bit annoyed at the end of the game. I don't know why, but it just kind of feels like that. I mean, getting onto the talking points, we've got to start on that opening 10 or 15 minutes or so where defensively we were in absolute shambles, weren't we? I mean, I've picked out the two centre-backs here, particularly focused on Nick Anderton. He looks excellent in a back three. In the previous game, he looked fantastic in playing in a back three. But he looks really shaky in a back four. We said we think he might end up playing centre-back in the future. Can you persevere with that? Or is it one of those ones you look and think, right, if we need to switch to a back three, we know he can fit in there? Is that the way you look at it?
Interesting, isn't it? I mean, he won't be up to full speed because obviously Jack Armer's very much made sort of left back his own at the moment.
Yeah.
And we have sort of shuffled around a bit in the centre due to injuries to Bennett and McDonald. It'll be very interesting because Anderton's one of the few players that we don't know what's happening with in the summer yet, isn't he?
No, it's true.
So I would imagine he will probably get another offer because he's our captain at the end of the day, isn't he? So
yeah, you think he's probably going to get one, but then again, they might look and think Armer's developed so much. Do we need a player on as wage as big as Anderton's probably going to be on? Covering for him potentially. That's one way you look at it. You might think, do we get someone a bit cheaper, or do we get another young lad maybe to back up Armer? It's amazing how well Armer's done this season. I mean, we're going to cover sort of player reviews for the season, aren't we, next week, I think. And the way he's slotted in as a young lad who'd never played Football League level before, he doesn't look like an inexperienced youngster, does he?
No. He's not phased, is he, at all?
But yeah, I've got to say as well there, Dan, that Aaron Hayden didn't have the greatest game alongside him either, to be fair. So you've got to point that out to him. And he was at fault for the second goal, wasn't he, I think?
Yeah, I think Hayden's been a little bit inconsistent in recent weeks, whether that's just suffering from the, a bit of tiredness from the backlog of games, catching up, it's...
I mean, he's been almost ever present in that run. I think he missed one game, didn't he?
Yeah.
So it's going to be tough.
I think he's our highest appearance maker this season as well, Hayden.
Yeah, he won't be far off, will he? I think only maybe Farman or...
Farman will have dropped down now with Norman playing a couple.
True, that's true. He's maybe had missed four, hasn't he, I think, in total?
Yeah.
So there you go. But yeah, no, it's just one of those games, wasn't it? And defensively, we just didn't look like we were at the races at all, and yet we still managed to come out winners in the game, which is which is crazy, isn't it, really? I mentioned it there before in the introduction bit. He stuck with pretty much the strongest 11 he could pick, bar maybe Mellish was the only real player he dropped who you'd expect to probably start if you're picking your strongest 11. Do you think this was the right call? I mean, should he be trying different things? Or considering we still had a chance to finish bottom half, do you think it was more important to make sure we finished as high as possibly we could?
I can understand why for Orient, because, we've guaranteed ourselves a 10th place finish now. It was, an away game. But I would like to think on the flip that this week against Walsall, give some of these lads a run out. It's even if it's just off the bench for half an hour, instead of 5 minutes. I've just pulled up the stats here, actually, on who has played the most this season. Hayden has 42 and 2 from the bench. Mellish has 40 and 3 from the bench. Right. Callum Guy has 42. Paul Farman has 41. And you've got Alessandra with 37 and 7. There's quite a few in the sort of the 30s.
It just shows you how strong a sort of selection of players are then, really, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Those ones, but there you go. I think I sort of agree. I think with hindsight, I was a bit annoyed before, but the more I thought about it, I thought, well, I do suppose I get the point of going and trying to make sure you get all 3 points. But if you're doing that, for me, Mellish should be starting the game because he's the one player, real plays with fire in his belly, doesn't he? And he's got that desire to chase every single last ball, and you can see he was annoyed, wasn't he? I think when he came on, he was almost like he felt an injustice for the fact that he didn't start the game. He wanted to go out and prove a point, and another really smart finish for his goal.
Yeah, like I say, he's started most games, so he probably did think, why is it me that's missing out? Which sort of shows the mentality of our squad. They all want to play. So
yeah, I mean, generally the team didn't play very well the first half. I think it's fair to say. I mean, going in 2-1 down, we're probably lucky it wasn't 3 or 4-1 down, really, weren't we? I mean,
yeah.
One thing we didn't mention there before, actually, Nick Anderton's clearance off the line was outstanding.
Yeah,
how he kept that one out, I don't know, but won the penalties, Anzala, and then steps up to take it, manages to injure himself by the sound of things, and It was not a good penalty, was he?
No.
Played a back pass to the keeper, didn't he?
Yeah.
Really frustrating that. Then Mellish obviously gets the equaliser, and then we give away a soft goal just before the break. And at that point, you're thinking, that's the point where you start to think to yourself, why didn't you just put out, a changed 11, give a few players a run out, because they didn't look interested, a lot of those players, did they? I think they had a rock up the backside at our time, because we definitely came out looking a lot sharper after the break. And Alessandro won the penalty in the second half. Obviously, by this point, Zanzala had gone off for Mellish. Stepped up to take it. I mean, excellent penalty, wasn't it? I think, personally, if he's starting, he should be the penalty taker, because technically he's such a good player, isn't he?
Yeah, and it just brings me back. I remember on the message board at the start of the season, there was a lad claiming that Alessandro will do nothing this season. Well, he's scored 9 goals in total, and I think he's got about 7 or 8 assists. So I think he's more than proved his worth this season.
Yeah. Well, we've said it countless times on this programme. When he plays well, we play well.
Yeah.
It's simple as that. And it's finding a way to fit him into the team sometimes. When you play him at centre forward, he's not probably going to get as many goals as other players might do in that role, but he links other players in and they benefit. Like Mellish benefits massively from when he plays as that centre forward, doesn't he? He runs off him. So
I think Alessandro would be best playing off a central striker in a 3-5-2.
Yeah, it's one of those ones, isn't it? When you're playing free at the back, he probably is a player you want to have in there, I think. I think he suits it really well in that formation. Magnus Norman came in again for this game. Decent enough performance, really. I mean, for me,
good penalty save. Very
good penalty save. He's a big lad, isn't he?
Yeah.
I think he looks good as a backup. I'm not yet sure whether he'd be a decent number 1. It's hard to tell this early on, but
I think we haven't seen enough of him, to be fair.
That's the thing. I still think Farman's the better keeper in what I've seen so far.
And it would be interesting to see Norman with a crowd in.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen someone on the message board suggesting we bin off Farman and promote Gab Breeze and just have him as backup to Norman. I mean, that's absolute nonsense.
It'd be a risk, wouldn't it?
It's a risk, and it's a nonsense, isn't it? Because I mean, look at Farman's got the joint highest clean sheet record for us since Kieran Westwood in 2008. And it's only the fact that he's missed his last few games that he's probably not going to beat that record of Bonham and Colin, isn't it? So there you go. George Tanner, he had a tough time in this game, didn't he? I think it's fair to say. I mean, up against Brophy for Orient, he looks a very good player. Actually, really impressed with him. But he didn't get a huge amount of support. Actually, I think that's probably a fair point.
Yeah.
But once again, comes up with the goods with a goal, doesn't he? And a shot from the edge of the area he, with his left foot. He's not got a bad finisher, is he? With his swing,
he's quite good at his goal against. All his goals have been. I think that was his third, wasn't it? They've all been quite similar, just sort of coming into the box.
Well, it was almost identical to his goal against Morecambe, wasn't it?
Yeah, I was just working out if it was Morecambe or Salford. It just shows, the fitness levels are obviously back up, because the fact that our right back's making those runs into the box in injury time in the 90th minute is a good sign, I
was really impressed with how he strikes the ball as well. It's so, there's no curve or anything. He was just like an arrow into the bottom corner.
Yeah, I think that, again, it's something we've alluded to before. Obviously, when we interviewed him, he mentioned about how they all play different positions at Man United, and I think that's fairly obvious when he has a shot.
Yeah, we haven't had many right backs in recent years that score a lot of goals, have we? Really?
No.
It's nice to have one that's well, Tom Miller obviously got a few, didn't he? When he was here as well for a couple of the seasons at least. But yeah, no, good to see him get a winning goal. I mean, I think he would be the first to say, like I said there, he didn't have the greatest game defensively, but he's come up with the goods later on in the game, hasn't he? So
yeah, I mean, first half of the season, George was brilliant. Obviously, then he had his injury, and then he sort of came back when the club was struggling full stop, and like many others, it's been very stop-start, and I think you can sort of make a comparison with Hayden, who we mentioned earlier. I think it's probably just general. They've played that much football in 3 months. They are going to have the odd bad game, aren't they? But these players will have learned a lot. For most of them, it's their first full season. You're talking Hayden, Tanner, Riley. Even the likes of Callum Guy, they've never played this many games in a season, and it can only bode well for next season, hopefully.
Absolutely, and the fact that we're keeping most of the squad together, I think, is a key thing as well.
Yeah.
It seems like Beach is very keen to get most of them tied down. I mean, we haven't really sort of covered it in the talking points, but I might as well mention it here. I mean, the way he was talking after the game in some of his post-match interviews, it sounds like he's quite keen to actually keep Dean Furman and possibly even Gimme Toure. He wasn't, because Toure's not featured in the last few matchday squads, but the way he was talking was quite unusual, wasn't it? Really, I'll be honest with you, I sometimes find it hard to understand the point he's making, Chris Beach, in some of his interviews, because he goes off on tangents a little bit. But I don't know what you made of it, Dan. It sounded to me like he wants to keep Furman, but it might be difficult to convince him to stay because he's not been getting game time.
Yeah, I mean, as everyone knows, I'm the self-confessed Dean Furman fan club. Again, as we've said previously, the number of players who've mentioned what a good bloke he is, he's obviously the old head of the dressing room, and he isn't the sort to probably complain, but whenever he's come in, he's always done a half-decent job, I think, and I think he's just been a bit unlucky in that we've had such a settled midfield. Just mentioned there that Guy and Mellish are into the 40 appearances each. Riley won't be far behind them, so he's just a little bit victim of circumstance.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, isn't it? So it's going to be interesting next week to see what happens with the release list, because like you said, there's still some big names there to be decided on, obviously. And your Patricks and your Zanzalas and your Andertons, we've mentioned, and Reece Bennett, even if we can convince him to stay. I'd imagine Beach will offer him something, whether he will stay or not, I don't know, but it'll be interesting to see what happens there. I think we've pretty much covered the Orient game there, Dan, haven't we? I mean, it's just, like I said, just a weird end of season game, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Just an odd one. Right, we'll take a break now then, and we'll be back soon, and we'll be looking ahead to the Walsall game and also going through your answers to our fans' question from last week about the fan experience of Brunton Park. We'll be back in just a sec.
Hi, this is George Tanner. You are listening to the Brunton Bugle.
And we're back for part 2 of this episode, looking ahead to the final game of the season at home against Walsall at Brunton Park. Does anyone really care what happens in this game? It's hard to get motivated, isn't it, really? It's a strange one. I put on Twitter the other day, I bought my final iFollow pass of the season the other day. And
I've literally just had my email through as we're recording with my codes.
Yeah, obviously, because you got a cash season ticket, didn't you, this season?
Yeah,
so you got the thing. I mean, I just hope to hell that fans are back next season, because as Julian from the Lowdown podcast we spoke to last week said, what watching games on iFollow has made you realise is just how bloody awful some of the games are.
Yeah.
I mean, some of those games that were 0-0s and dreadful games, I probably still would have enjoyed going to the game because I would have been having a crack with the people around me. Imagine having a pint afterwards or something. Or you could have a laugh and talk with each other. God, wasn't that game bloody awful? And, you'd go down and think, when have we seen a game worse than that? You'd get chatting about it, wouldn't you? Whereas with this, you sat at home, on your sofa in your pants, eating a packet of Monster Munch. And it's just,
Other snacks are available.
Yeah, well, if Monster Munch want to sponsor us there, we're more than welcome to take free supplies of it.
But only if it's pickled onion.
Roast beef for me, thank you very much. But yeah, it's just not as enjoyable, is it? It's made you realise how important having fans there and going to the games actually is, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's a completely different scenario. And to be fair, at the start of the season, it was new, wasn't it? It was
a novelty, yeah.
Yeah, novelty is the right word. And I think it has, especially as the season sort of petered out, I think certainly the novelty has worn off, hasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Not to give you any omens here, Dan, but the referee for this weekend's game is Mark Edwards. Now, the last game he refereed for us is a game that you won't want me to talk about because it was in a trophy that we don't talk about. But
well, it doesn't count then, does it?
Exactly.
So what was his game before that?
Prior to that, his game was a 0-0 home draw with Grimsby in December 2019. I genuinely don't remember anything about that game, so that probably tells you all you need to know, doesn't it? It's going to be an awful one. Up against Walsall, a team that we expected to do... I can't remember what we expected them to. I think we thought they were going to be mid-table, potentially because they'd kept a settled squad pushing for the playoffs, but actually... Turns out keeping a settled squad worked against them because they didn't strengthen, did they? And they've really struggled this season, haven't they?
They've
just
not
done
very much, have they?
No, I mean, Darryl Clark is someone we thought was a very good manager for them. That's one of the reasons we thought they'd do all right, because they had a decent manager in charge. But for some reason, he's just not been able to sort it out there, has he? And he's ended up leaving to go to Port Vale, and he's worked wonders there. He just seems like he's fallen into his lap, really, hasn't it? And maybe just Port Vale didn't have the right manager, and that was the problem all season.
I mean, you look at Walsall. We're looking at the last 11 here on our notes, and there's not much stands out, is there?
No, I mean, I'm looking at. I mean, Hayden White's one of the few names I recognise there. I mean, the rest of them,
it's just a very
Ozadabi, I suppose. And
it's
Gordon,
a very average League Two squad, isn't it?
Average is probably even being kind, you could argue.
Yeah.
They've picked up a bit of form lately. The last 6 games form table, they're 13th at the moment. They've won 3 and lost 3 of the last 6. Prior to that, they were on a horrendous run. I don't think they won for something like 15, 16 games.
Yeah.
And that included the game where we beat them on 2nd of January, didn't we?
Oh, those were the days.
God, you look back at them now and you think they were awful and we were flying. You thought there's only one way this could happen. Actually, we ended up finishing closer to them than we could have possibly imagined in the end, didn't we? So, yes, I mean, the recent form's picked up. I mean, they lost out last time out against, Morecambe, who were just having an incredible season, really. The last win was in the previous fixture, but that was against Scunthorpe, and God, anyone could beat Scunthorpe right now. I mean, they're lucky that they had a short run of form, didn't they? I think about February, March, and that's just kept them out of trouble, really. But 2 impressive wins over Forest Green and Tranmere Road in those last fixtures as well. But mind you, they're 2 teams that have had a really shocking running, haven't they?
Yeah.
It looks like they're probably going to just about make the playoffs in the end.
All this talk just basically sums up what we've said all season, that it's just not a very good League Two these days.
I mean, this season especially. I think the circumstances this season have dictated that basically the most consistent sides were going to be near the top, and Cheltenham have been consistent all season. Cambridge have been pretty consistent. Morecambe have been pretty consistent. I mean, Bolton are arguably the outlier, aren't they? Because they've shot up the league, haven't they, really, after an awful first half of the season. But most of the teams up there are the ones that have been consistent, basically. And that's the difference over the campaign. Their manager is Brian Dutton. Not much of a professional career to talk about. I think he played a few games for Cambridge, and that's about it, really. He's mostly been a non-league player, but he was Darrell Clark's assistant. When Clark left, he was given the head coach role until the end of the season. But
I think that's very much a stopgap, knowing that they were unlikely to go down, sort of thing.
Yeah,
wasn't
I think it's maybe him just doing a favour for them almost, and
and
doing that to see how it goes.
See who's available in the summer type thing.
Yeah, and he's basically, Darrell Clark's probably said to him, "Look, you can join me in the summer if you want, if they let you go." So
yeah,
I imagine that's what he'll do with that. I mean, former Blue Hayden White, I was seeing their ranks as mentioned before, and Dangerman. I mean, I picked out 3 attacking players. They're good players, but beyond that, there's not much to pick out there, is there? I mean, Ozadabi, Josh Gordon's a very good player on his day, and Wes McDonald. But other than that, I'd struggle to get excited if I was a Saddlers fan. And if they're, there's a real danger if they don't improve over the summer, they could be right down near the bottom at the end of the season, couldn't they?
They could do a Scunthorpe this season, couldn't they?
Yeah, I mean, I'd hate to see them go out because it's a good away day, isn't it? It's a nice little trip down the M6.
One, isn't it? Yeah.
Easy one to get to. When it was open, the Saddlers Social Club used to be a great place to go for a drink. We actually, last time we went, me, Mike and a mate of ours, Johnny, went to this pub. Just as you come off the motorway and you're heading towards the ground, there's a little pub on the side, but it's also an Indian. And Johnny had a curry before the game, and he insists it's the best curry he's ever had. He's listening to this, and I know he'll want me to mention the Walsall curry that he had. And he keeps saying, like, well, one weekend I might just have a little drive down to Walsall and go and have a curry at this pub.
Yeah.
But there you go. I mean, in terms of United for this game, I mean, mentioned in the review section, but surely Chris Beach is going to give some of those fringe players a run out of this game. Now we know we're more or less finishing 10th, you'd think.
You would think so. I mean, McDonald and Bennett are highly unlikely to be playing.
No, you don't risk them, do you, really?
And obviously Anderton is not in the best of form. So Morgan Feeney, do we give him a run out? Possibly. He played 60 minutes for the reserves last week. Obviously, they'll have probably not wanted to feature him Saturday because just let him recover.
More intense game as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, if he's had a full week of training, why not?
Yeah.
And regarding Feeney, the feeling seems to be that we may already have something in place with him for next season.
Well, that'd be good, wouldn't it? Because I'd like to see
we've not had any confirmation from anyone, but just the general feeling from words that have been said suggests that he may be here next season. Which,
well, I'd hope so, because really would like to see what he's got to show. Really,
Yeah,
'cause, I mean,
yeah.
he's been very unlucky with picking up a broken foot.
like I've said before, a fit Morgan Feeney would be nowhere near Brunton Park.
Oh, absolutely not. If he has a good, start to the season, you want to get him tied down pretty quickly.
Yeah,
for a longer
yeah.
deal, wouldn't you? But there you go. So yeah, I'd like to see Charters get a start at the very least in this game. I think.
Yeah,
and maybe even give Dixon a run out. I don't really see the harm in that.
and
Scott.
I was going to say Scott will be the other one, especially if Zanzala's still got his knock.
Yeah, that'd be the obvious one, wasn't it? Because, I mean, like I said, at the end of the day, we know what Alessandro can do. Patrick maybe still needs to impress to earn his deal. Possibly, maybe that's why you'd start him. So, he's not been in great form of late. I mean, that's the kind of player he is. He's inconsistent, but on his day, he's unstoppable at this level.
Yeah, yeah.
But there you go. So yeah, I mean, you've more or less covered the injuries there, I think, Dan. I mean, Ethan Walker possibly a slight doubt because he came off with a knock, didn't he, after having come on as a sub against Orient. He didn't look very happy about it, but it seemed to be for an injury. So from what Beach is saying,
he'd also picked up a yellow card, hadn't he?
Yeah, he's been a bit unlucky with that one. I think it's fair to say, but there you go. I mean, if he's fit, I'd probably give Walker a run out because I think he's earned it. But yeah, I have to say. Well, let's shall we do some predictions then, Dan?
5-0.
Okay. You're going to go... Having listened to what I said earlier about the fact that we rarely score on the final day of the season, you're going to go for 5-0.
But you haven't heard how the 5 are coming yet. Chedwin Scott gets given his 5-minute run out and scores a goal a minute.
Okay.
Before ripping his shirt off in front of the bench, shouting, "Sign me up," pointing at David Holdsworth in the box. And then he gets a 2-year deal and scores 25 next season.
Fair enough. I'm going to go for 4-0, and that's partly because I think we'll play with a bit of freedom, and I just think Walsall are absolute gash.
Yeah.
I didn't get a chance to get a Walsall fan on, but I'd imagine he wouldn't have been the happiest person ever.
No.
After the way they've played this season, so I'm going to go for 4-0. Goal scorers. If Morgan Feeney plays, I reckon he'll score. If not, Aaron Hayden. Let's throw in a Coyote goal to sign him off for his time with us. Scott will get a goal, and why not? Taylor Charters will get his first goal for the club as well. Yeah. So there you go, 4-0. Right, let's move on to the X-Files before we go on to the fans question bit, Dan. Quite
a bit this week, yeah.
Busy week.
Goals from a selection, quite a few usual names. Mark Beck scored for Harrogate.
More on him in a minute.
Yeah, Josh Todd for Ayr United, Geffin Jones for Bolton, Tom Lawrence for Derby, Cole Stockton once again for Morecambe.
He's in incredible form this season.
Yeah.
Fair play to him, like, fair play.
Paddy Madden for Stockport, Jelly Yates got a couple more for Blackpool.
They're in the playoffs now, aren't they, I think, guaranteed?
Yeah, and if they don't go up, I think Yates will be.
Yeah, definitely.
Darryl Duffy for Stranraer. Angelo Balanta got another for Dagenham.
Goal machine, isn't he? Just going for fun.
And the best one of the week here, this is a classic. Former Loney, Callum Higginbottom, scored for Kelty Hearts in their first leg against Brora Rangers. That's the winners of the Lowland and the Highland Leagues. The winner of this game gets to play Brecon City in a 2-legged playoff to go into the bottom Scottish division next season.
I absolutely love the name of Scottish teams. I can't get enough of Bonnyrigg Rose and Gala Ferrydean and stuff like that. It's just incredible how some of the names of the teams up there.
Clacknacuddin.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've seen some tweets about this the other day because Brecon, weren't they trying to argue that because of the way the season's gone and everything, we shouldn't be in a playoff or something?
What their argument was that the two teams in the playoff have had 2 curtailed seasons, and they basically said they should both get promoted and Brecon stay in the league.
But then, did you see East Stirlingshire's response to them? Yeah. Basically saying, man up and take your relegation like we did. Enjoy your time in the Lowland League.
Yeah.
Or not. Or would Brecon be in the Highland League? I don't know.
Possibly,
yeah. Not sure how the cut-off works there.
Other news, Tony Gallimore's son has got a pro deal with Scunthorpe.
Sam there, it's actually Dan. I apologise, I put Sam there.
He's finished his YTS at Scunthorpe and signed a pro deal.
Isn't his other son at Carlisle City?
Yes, I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Richie Bennett was recalled by Stockport from his loan at Hartlepool after scoring, I think it was 5 in 4 games.
Yeah. suddenly panicked and thought, hang on a sec, they're pulling away from us here, and called him back to Stockport. So I think they've gone ahead of Stockport in the league now, haven't they? Hartlepool,
yeah, it's very tight at the top now. Mark Beck, again, mentioning him, won the FA Trophy with Harrogate. This was the 2019-20 final, and Harrogate become the first league team to win the FA Trophy.
Kedwin Scott's former team, Hebburn, they won the Vars
FA Vars as well, yeah.
And aren't they in the final again? Or they're on the way
I think
to the final?
I think they're in the quarters, is it next? Yeah, but the Northern League teams are always traditionally quite strong in the Vars, to be fair.
Sure.
Simon Tracy has left his chief scout role at Northampton.
Probably Oldham any day soon.
Probably heading for Oldham over the summer. And one that just came out, former forward and Penrith player, Stephen Rigg, has left Dover, which isn't a surprise because
they're a bit of a mess, aren't they,
Dover are in a massive mess. I actually, my mate is good mates with Riggy, and the deal he got offered to sign for Dover was ridiculous by non-league standards. But he'll be looking for another club. And then I stumbled upon a copy of the Newcastle Chronicle at work last night, and some cracking former names here.
So it's a North-East non-league update.
Yes, Adam Campbell and Michael Liddell have been released by Darlow. I think Campbell is going to Gateshead.
Liddell, I can't believe when you told me he's only 32, isn't he? I thought he'd be older.
And Gateshead, speaking of Gateshead, they're struggling to hold on to Jordan Cook. Connor Thompson, ex-Carlisle and Blackburn, is staying at Blythe and has a point to prove, apparently. And Gary Liddell got a red card playing for Hartlepool.
There you go. So that's it. That's the XL section. Nice busy one this week. I imagine next week's will be very busy because we'll have the retain list, and what we'll do is
we'll probably do that separate.
Yeah, because I imagine it's going to be a busy one, isn't it?
Yeah, in fact, we could probably do that tied in with the sort of end of season review, couldn't we?
Indeed, and we'll go through and work out which ex-United players have been promoted this season and whatnot, and relegated. So we'll get that together. Yeah. Okay, well then, to finish off this week, Dan, something a little bit different. We asked the listener the question last week, didn't we?
Yes.
We want to know about the fan experience.
Got some fantastic feedback.
Yeah, loads of responses actually, really impressive. We're going to try.
Across our Twitter and our newly launched Facebook page.
Yes, thank you to everyone like that.
If you're on Facebook, just search the Brunton Bugle and you will find us.
So basically, the question we asked was, with fans expecting to be back at games again next season after being, bar the test games, away for nearly 18 months, what improvements would you like to see from the fan experience of Brunton Park, whether it's bars, foods, ticket options or other facilities? Let us know. Some really interesting responses. I mean, I'll be honest with you, the vast majority was about the standard of the food and the drink.
Yeah,
there was a lot about that. We had an idea that was going to be the case. So what I'll do is I'll cover the facilities and ticket section a bit first, because that's a little bit smaller, and then we'll plough on through the food and drink one, and then there's a little bit other some comedy answers, I think it's fair to say, at the end.
Yeah.
So in terms of facility and tickets, first up, David Harrison on Twitter said more ticket offers, like say kids for £1 during the school holidays, and if there's back-to-back home games, 2 tickets for the price of 1, and drop the £3 extra charge on buying a ticket on a match day. I mean, the free ticket extra charge is a bugbear of yours, isn't it, Dan? You've always
I'm not a massive fan of it, never have been.
No.
I remember, I think I asked about it once at one of the meetings with the club, and it was to gauge how many stewards, etc., they would need, and food and drink. Well, if you can't, my response was, if you can't tell what the crowd's going to be based on our current league position, previous games, crowds, and opposition, you know, you're doing something seriously wrong, in my opinion.
Well, can I say something on that as well? If it's all about having the bars properly staffed and everything, they're so poorly staffed on some match days, there's no way they're using those figures to work it out.
Well,
they're not doing it properly, clearly.
But then that's probably because it's been contracted out, hasn't it? And could it be down to lack of communication?
Possibly, that might be an issue. You never know.
Yeah.
But I think he's absolutely right about ticket. Obviously, I think it would be good to see maybe for those like half-term weeks if we've got a midweek game, do the kids for £1.
Yeah.
I mean, I know we do quite cheap tickets for kids already, but do it up to like 21-year-olds. Something saying up to 21 years old, you can get a ticket for £1. You'll get people who'll come home during the holidays from the university, what or not. They'll come and watch the match. Might encourage them to go to some more games on top of that. So. I'd like to. I'd agree with that with David. I think maybe that's one that I'd like to see a bit more exciting ticket offers. Really, and that's the key thing. And to be fair, I think Nigel Clibban does suggested, hasn't he, that they do want to look at what the ticket offer they do is and try and improve it because it's kind of good that we've sort of stuck with the same prices for quite a few years now, but it's stagnating a little bit, isn't it? And I think even bumping some of the prices up a little bit and leveling them out. If you said like. It was a standard £20, whatever, for some tickets, but you didn't have the extra £3 thing. I think people would be more accepting of it, probably.
Yeah.
But there you go. David Snowden on Twitter said, 3 sides of the ground, ! I too would like to see the waterworks utilised. I think someone else actually did suggest this, so apologies I didn't pick your one out. Having fans on all sides of the ground can only be a good thing. Oh, and the Warwick Road End urinal. We'll get onto that in a minute because that gets brought up a few times as well. I think it's fair to say. Yeah, I would like to see 4 sides of the grounds, but I totally understand the reasoning for the club not using it because it is an additional cost. It is additional stewards. You've got to have the catering hut open. You've got to have toilet facilities and things like that. You've got and plus you're potentially putting fans off coming because it is an open terrace. If you put a roof on it, then maybe you might encourage more fans to come in that end, possibly, but. That's the problem with them because it's an open terrace. I think it would be slightly off-putting too. But then again, you probably don't care what happens to the away fans, do you?
No, not at all.
No. Yeah, I mean, would you like to see all 4 stands open?
Traditionally, yes, but I do understand why we don't at present. I think that's the fairest stanza.
And we need somewhere to put our flags next season, don't we?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, well, Mike Edgar next up, he repeats the point about the Warwick Road End in particular. The toilets and catering in the Warwick Road End are in desperate need of improvement. Aldi on Twitter also says the B-stand toilets too small and leaking all the time. I mean, the problem with those ones is there's not a huge amount. You could probably do them out. I think they could definitely do a refreshing, but there's not much you can do in terms of size. Is there in that?
It goes back to the main stand just being a rabbit warren of rooms and pipes and what have you.
Yeah, it's just not well put together, is it, for this day and age? But yeah, Mike's point about the toilets in the Warwick Road, and I mean that comes up a few times. I mean, I'm looking through here. David Harrison actually again, he has another point where he says the roof on the Warwick Bog and maybe a sink to wash our hands. I mean, that tells you all you need to know, doesn't it? I mean, it's one of those things, maybe it's one thing to look at in the future for CUSG and look at, is that somewhere where we invest some money actually building some decent
well, just going on about sink washing, Avril Richards on Twitter also said hot water to wash your hands. In winter, it's freezing enough without having to use...
Yes, absolutely agree on that one. That's something that wise would be even... The paddock, probably the newest set of toilets in the whole ground, the paddock south ones, are an absolute state sometimes, and the taps, half of them don't work. I think only one of the hand dryers works. It's little things like that people start to notice, and it makes the club
I've
look
just looked at another one here, Adam Stoddart via Facebook. It's a stupid one, he says, but in the Pioneer stand, the bogs are in pardon the pun, a shit state, and in more of a need of a repaint, some sprucing up needed.
It's little things like this people notice, don't they?
Yeah.
And they turn up to a game and they're like, oh, why do I want to take my kid along to this match when, the facilities are crap like this? And it's little things like that sometimes get a bit neglected. It's something that I think the club probably needs to look at in terms of just giving some of those facilities a good little spruce up. That's what they need. The Warwick Road End's a completely different matter altogether. I mean, I've not been in the Warwick Road End for maybe 20 years now, I think, to watch a game, possibly a little sooner than that. But the toilets back then were literally... there was no roof on it. It was some chicken wire above to stop people breaking in, or probably breaking out of some bad games, I think. And a wall, basically a trough against the wall, like a bit of piping, wasn't it? Like a guttering.
Yeah.
Not good enough. That's something where we need to look at and think, can we build a small toilet block around the back there? Because there's probably space to build something there, but
While we're on about facilities, Howard Pimblett via Facebook, please keep a seat clean throughout the season. You shouldn't have to pay £20 to sit in bird mess.
Yep.
To which Jim Wright replied, "This also applies to the paddock crush barriers."
Absolutely.
I think we generally have a bit of a bird problem at the club.
Yeah.
I know the flags that we've got up, a couple of them have got several bird mess on them now because with nobody being in the Warwick Road end for a long time, there's birds flying in and out it a lot at the moment, unfortunately. So
well, we'll have to get the pressure washers out for that, won't we? Good clean before they get put away at the end of the season. Yes, I mean, generally, the standard of the toilets around the ground is something that's come up quite a lot. So thank you to everyone who's mentioned that. We will feed that back to the club as well, because I think, particularly the Warwick Road, and there needs to be some sort of solution there because they aren't good enough. That's being brutally honest there. Anything else from facilities, Dan? I mean, there's a good one here from C. Coulthard on Twitter. He said, I think everyone else can agree on the catering, which we'll come to in a minute. One specific request, though, a new TV in the paddock bar closest to Warwick. I think it's from the early 90s. And it's a good point. Some of the facilities in terms of things like that haven't been upgraded for a long time. And I know it's an extra cost and the club have got to, look at where they've saved money possibly, but it's not too expensive to buy a decent, flat screen telly these days, is it, Dan?
This is where we should be trying to utilise connections with local businesses.
Yes.
If you can find a local business to donate half a dozen decent flat screen tellies
at the half price, something like that, and they get some sponsorship thrown in.
We'll chuck them some sponsorship. I'll give them a free day out in Foxes in return. It's
I mean, we don't always follow the match sponsors over the season, do we? So it's one of those ones you say, well, how about if you give us some free TVs, we'll make you match sponsor for this game coming up. And don't just give them a crappy Tuesday night game. Give them your top billing one, like a Bolton or something. But you give them a decent game, don't you?
Yeah,
that's what you'd think. But yeah, I think that pretty much covers the facilities bit, doesn't it? Oh, sorry, no. There's one here from Paul Hayton on Facebook, and he said, "Get better stewards with people skills and not bullies who think they own the place." I mean, stewards is one of those things, isn't it? It's quite subjective, and I think people down the years have complained about these things. I know from experience of when I used to be up in the press box a lot and going up to the B stand, and the two fellas on the stairs, they're absolutely bob on, aren't they? They're really nice blokes and really helpful. They've been doing it for years. It can be just depend on the people you get sometimes, isn't it? A little bit, isn't it?
I think some of this as well stems from the mask wearing when we were allowed in for games this season. There was I remember I got approached in the Warwick once, asked to put my mask up, and I was like, well, how am I going to finish eating this sandwich I brought? Do I eat it through the mask? And I think it was the next game, one of them told my lad to put his mask on. I'm like, well, he's not turned 11 yet. He doesn't have to wear it.
No, exactly. It's sometimes it's a bit of training, isn't it? And
it goes down to the communication thing, doesn't it?
Yeah, and if they get people in last minute as well, people quite often they'll have new starters most games, won't they, I'd imagine? So it can be difficult, can't it? Other things Paul said, the ticket system is a joke as well. Why it takes so long to get a ticket is beyond me. I don't think it's as bad these days. I think it's been much more improved. I mean, when they started taking postcodes and stuff like that, it was a nightmare. But actually, my experience in recent times when I've got one is actually it's not too difficult. I don't know what. I mean, you probably bought tickets more often than me for games because you had a season, didn't you, where you didn't have a season ticket. So you might know better than me. But I suppose you bought them in advance as well, didn't you? So.
Yeah, I was usually nipping down if I was in the area. It was easy just to pop in the office and get one. So
yeah, I mean, he says overall, matchday experience is crap for all supporters. Could do with so much more to get fans down earlier. A beer tent, we'll get into that one in a minute. Maybe local youth games on the training pitch, get community more involved. I think do stuff on the training pitch is a risk because they don't want to churn it up because we have enough problems with that, and I understand why they might want to protect that. Like I said, we'll talk about the beer tent in a minute. He also mentioned obviously about the food and drink general service is not good enough. The young workers do try, but they're best, but they need more help. Let's move then on to the food and drink, Dan, because there's a lot to come
this is a big one because the club are actually currently negotiating with potential suppliers. So
yes. Yeah.
I know that Nigel Clibbins will be listening to this eagerly. So
yep. Well, first up, Aldi on Twitter said a fan zone like the one at Tranmere would be good. They had some ace beers on, decent enough food, and live bands among other things. This is something that I went to that briefly into that fan zone at Tranmere, and it was brilliant. Some of the work Tranmere Rovers actually do down there, it's one of those ones you almost think, sorry, could the club send someone down there to speak to Tranmere or have a look at some of the stuff they do?
Yeah.
Because we're not in direct competition with them for fans in an area, so we could say, well, what stuff do you do in a match day? I mean, there's not a huge amount of space around Brunton Park either. If anyone's been down there, it's hemmed in by streets on two sides, isn't it?
Yeah,
There's a car park, I think, where they pretty much put the tents, and that's taken away some of the parking. But the advantage is you're getting more people down early who probably wouldn't drive anyway because they could have a drink.
We've mentioned before that the main car park in Brunton Park would be ideal for this. You know, you would have to jiggle your parking about a bit for players and staff. But if you could put a semi-permanent tent up with, you know, a DJ on and some decent food and drink, you know, I think they'd be quite surprised.
I'd go down more often. At the moment,
Yeah.
I stay in town. I go for, well, I used to go to Spoons. Probably won't go as much now, but I'd go to Brewdog or or to go down to, is it Devonshire Street, isn't it, or whatever? And not Devonshire Street. What's the one with all the bars on? I always forget the name of it. I can't remember it now.
Yeah, Devonshire Street.
Is it Devonshire? Oh, there you
Yeah.
go. Sorry, I completely forgot. But yeah, I go for like a pint on one of those, like the Fat Gadget, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't go down to the ground for drinks. I just don't. So, I mean, something like that would be much better where you could... I mean, even if the weather's a bit crap, I'm sure people will just gather in there. And in the winter, just get a couple of heaters or something. And people will stand, they'll have their coats on, they'll have a pint.
Yeah, I'm going to rattle through a few of these now, and they're all pretty much on the same. You know, I mean, our good mate Nick Brown on Twitter, edible food and pints that don't taste like piss would be a start. Our very own co-host Mike wonders if bottles could be the future. No messing about with pipes and stuff, quicker to serve.
I think some people don't like bottles, do they? But I agree. I tend, if I'm in the ground, I'd
Certainly
I'd
at
probably
half
prefer a
time,
bottle.
I think it would work.
Yes, definitely. And a better choice of bottle as well would be nice.
Yeah. Dan Johnson via Twitter put the early kick-off on the TVs and 4 pints for a tenner.
I mean, what I'd say about the 4 pints for a tenner is you've got to be realistic in what a brewery will offer you.
Yeah. But I think the scope to try and do some better deals,
Yeah. Even if you have one particular drink each week is reduced or something.
These are all pretty much the same, you know. Shirts. J.R. Bullman on Twitter. The bar area in the paddock just needs better organisation than one bloke trying his best. Used to be a thriving bar with half-time drinks, more staff needed.
I should pick up that one because I'm presuming he's talking about the Northern Paddock Bar, which is the one I go in usually with Greg and a few of the others who stand around with me. And yeah, poor old, I can't remember the name of the lad who's in the bar there, but he's absolutely snowed under every game. It's only him. All you need is 2 people in there. Even if, in fact, have 3 people in there. One person who deals with the people who are collecting the half-time pints and then 2 people serving. Because one people serving, it gets busy in there really quickly. And I just feel the organisation there is a bit of a shambles sometimes. Yeah. It's a very tight little place in there. It just needs a bit of thought and planning. And it feels to me like the caterers over the last few years have been dialing it in, really. They've been phoning in with the way they've doing it.
That exactly ties in with the next one from Johnny Raffles on Twitter, who said, we think we can sort of say the catering and bar are on most people's lists all over the ground. Maybe bring someone local in who really knows how to turn it round and not just another faceless contracted company.
I think you've got to be careful then, because just because the local doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be any good. And I'm not sure where the companies we've been using have been based. I know one of the previous ones was local, and they weren't particularly great. So
I think this also stems back to the general state of the ground. If we had a modern ground that we could use 7 days a week, you would probably be able to employ someone to be in charge of food, drinks, and your offering. But because we literally are a once a fortnight operation, it's not viable, is it?
I do wonder as well, would you be better separating the bars and the catering huts bits? So one company deals with all the food side of it, the little huts or whatever in the stands and everything, and then another person or another company deals with the bar specifically, if you do that in-house maybe or something, I don't know. That for me would maybe work better, because it almost feels like they're a bit lost between the two, aren't they? They don't seem to know how to deal with things. It's a weird one. Yeah.
Speaking of food, Tracy Sturgis was, what about pop-up catering of local businesses with different food experiences?
We mentioned this last week, didn't we?
Yeah, maybe you could have an Indian, a Chinese, vegan, vegetarian, a bit more choice. I mean, it's maybe something they could look to do for certain games. You know, I mean,
and I think you're more likely to get people to go and try stuff, because the problem is if it's a burger every week or whatever, or a pie, and if those burgers and pies are shite, once they've had it once, they're not going to go back and try it again, are they?
Yeah.
Whereas you might go one time and have your curry wrap, and you're like, it wasn't the best, that. But then next week, maybe you're doing like pizza slices or something like that or whatnot, and you think, oh, actually, I'll go and give that a try this week or something. That's the thing, a bit of variety sometimes does help. I know you've got to generally stick with your bog standards, but you could produce them to a higher quality, couldn't you? That's the other thing also there.
It's quite funny, this, because nearly, I'm going to say about 6 of them at once here, but Blue Darren on Twitter, Ross Parkinson on Twitter, Rice UFC on Twitter, Phil Howe on Twitter, Ronnie Smith on Twitter, Chris Gibson on Facebook, and John Lucock on Facebook, all of them pretty much say the same thing, you know, decent food, decent drink, make it a better experience. You know, can we maybe try and get people in, as we've already mentioned, you know, like Tranmere do.
Yeah.
You know, there's a couple of mentions of the Lakeland Steaks food, which is,
brilliant.
I'll vouch for that. It's brilliant, you know, and all of these are pretty much saying the same thing, you know, it needs to improve. A couple of the better ones. Ian Mayer via Facebook, our wholesale food company owning chairman to provide the food to the club on the match day at a reasonable price.
I'm not sure that's even the big issue there. I think the problem is there's just the quality of the food and the way it's being cooked and the way it's being served here is probably one of the biggest problems there. I don't think it's always as simple as well as doing it at the reasonable price and that. And, I don't know the in and outs of it, but
a shout to John Coleman from the News and Star, who suggests that there should be wines and spirits in the media room.
yes, of course. Yes. I think one of the key things here is it doesn't necessarily have to be cheaper food, does it? I think what people are saying is quality is as much something that people are really, really keen on. Good quality food, that's what people want to have, don't they? Get value for the money.
Speaking on the quality and the one-off things, Ryan Devlin, who's one of our good fans, he actually mentions coming up with special drinks from local breweries. You know, I mean, the London branch got the Jimmy Glass Ale, didn't they?
Yeah.
Which went down well. You know, he's saying, why don't we speak to a local brewery and get Beach's Brew, you know,
do a guest
for this season.
Do a guest one every other game or something like that.
Yeah,
you know.
Even if it was once a month, you know. There's plenty of small breweries round about now, and you know, it would provide better options for our fans. Yeah, but it would also raise awareness for these breweries of what they're doing.
Yeah, you could have one at the outdoor bar that you have in your tent or whatever, if you've got that set up. And what you could do to them is, well, if you bottle it as well, we'll sell some in the club shop, because I think they did that with the Jimmy Glass one, don't they?
Yes, yeah.
And you could have them selling in town, you know, and whatnot, you know, named after different legends and things like that. And, you know, but yeah, that's a fair point. That one. I think the idea of the outdoor tent is one that I think the club really need to explore. And I know people say, "Oh, we need parking and stuff." Think about cutting back on the parking, maybe, because you know what they'll say. Oh, but then they'll put people off coming. Well, actually, if you're able to come down and have a drink and watch the game, more people may actually start to come on foot or by bus and stuff like that. And you then save the parking, don't you?
Yeah. When we say a tent, we don't mean like a 12-foot square canopy.
Yeah. Well,
I mean a proper, you know, a proper sort of wedding marquee size one.
Yeah.
With a proper bar, room for live music or a DJ, you know, and you know, get the ex-players coming up and mingling with the fans for half an hour and photos, you know. I mean, the scope is fantastic.
Speak to someone like Lummy for that, because Lummy clearly has got some decent contacts now. With ex-players he didn't even play with as well. That's the great thing as well. He seems to be building up like an old Carlo play. I'm sure loads of them would love to come down and chat with the fans about old times and things like that. And yeah, it's like I said, I think that's something the club really need to look at and explore, because I think there's really good opportunities potentially there to make money and get people coming down before games.
That's what one of the sort of rounding up these comments. I don't know how we quite pronounce this, but Rounds on Twitter, he said, it's sort of my last comment on all this, but I feel the club now have a massive chance over the course of this pre-season and summer to capitalise on all these points made by everyone with the new sort of catering contract coming into play, and the brewery contract's actually up as well.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's pretty much a clean slate So it's a fantastic opportunity, and people, he sort of says, people will want to come and watch because we've been starved of football. A good match day experience from the off could serve very well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We'll move on to the final other sort of section.
Yeah.
There's only a few here. Tim Graham, unsurprisingly, not the most positive Tim, are you? But there you go. Tim's always like that. But it's a fair point. You said mainly the same stuff people have mentioned continually for the last 10 to 15 years when the subject comes up, but it's generally never been acted on. That's the key thing.
Yeah,
we can't be ignoring this anymore. We really
like I've just said, we've got the perfect storm coming up because the catering's going to be fresh. It'll be a new brewery deal. Fans will be back after pretty much 18 months. Forget about the 4 or 5 games we saw; they were one-offs.
Yeah,
there's a little bit of goodwill about the club's looking like it's coming out of the whole COVID scenario on a better footing than most.
Yeah,
there really is a chance here.
Yes, definitely. So you also mentioned the one from Runes there. Kai Thompson suggests going back to one step beyond as a walkout song. I'll agree with that. I think the need to settle down on our own walkout song, don't we? I know you like the kids at United,
Sham 69 if the kids are United all day, every day.
Only problem is other clubs use that, don't they?
I don't care.
Reason. I know you don't.
I don't care.
Regan suggests a live stream to the Cali so we don't have to leave. I like that one, to be fair. Yeah. That's a good one. And Kenny G, finally.
Sums it up perfectly, doesn't he?
More wins. And it's true that the football's not good enough, people won't come, but more people will come if the experience is better. Get behind the team, and potentially that leads to more wins, doesn't it?
And one other that's a little bit off, slightly off a tangent, but there was a couple of mentions of the retail, just basically sort of saying the range isn't the best. I know the website. You actually helped set this up in 2005, was it?
I think it was round. It would have been round about then. It was set up the website. I think it's been more or less the same for years because they use the fit. I think they still use this. I don't know the details. I'll be brutally honest. I think they use the same supplier still. As in terms of the back shop for the actual shop itself, which all works on the stock take and everything. Yeah. But the club, the Blue Store site, I helped revamp it in about 2011, I think it was, when I was there, and it's had tweaks since then, and it is tweaks. It's nothing major's changed, and it's starting to look a little bit dated. And I think that's one area where the club really could have a look and say, actually, because I'll be honest, I live in Liverpool, and sometimes I think, I could do with getting some bits and pieces because I don't have a chance after the game, and I never go to the website because it's not the most easy to use, if I'm honest. But that just might just be just me. But then again, there's been a few comments there, so. There you go. That's it for this week then, Dan. Good little bit there about all the fan suggestions. Well, like I said, what we'll do is Dan will share them with Nigel Clibbins, and if there's anything extra anyone wants to add, do tweet us because we'll happily pass it on to the club, and we'll see what they can do in terms of improving the matchday experience. What I'd say is don't expect all those things to happen at once. Start next season. They're not suddenly going to see all these things happen, but I think you will see slight improvements and things. I know that the work's hopefully going to start on the Sporting Inn, isn't it, very soon? I think.
There's actually a site meeting tomorrow. We're on Thursday at the moment. Friday tomorrow there's a site meeting with some people.
That'll be fantastic if we can get that sorted soon as well. So that's it for this week, Dan. Thanks again for joining me. We'll be back probably it'll depend next week. There's no midweek game, is there? So we might record early on. We're probably going to wait to see the retain list come out, aren't we? And then have a look at it. And what we'll do,
I was going to say, we'll probably have a review of the Walsall game, update all the news, and then we'll sort of do the retained list, and then maybe the week after we could do a wider sort of retained list with all the other clubs, and maybe do our marks out of 10 for the squad, etc.
Yeah, we're going to do like a skill report style thing for the squad, aren't we? So we're going to give them like A to F and that kind of thing. Won't be many on F or any, possibly. I don't know. Yeah. Can't think anyone who's been that bad this season, to be fair. And obviously we'll look at players we'd like to see us sign over the summer, possibly, because a lot of the retainers will be out by then. And I will be recording in the next couple of weeks a special episode with Fox Analytics. We're going to go through some stats from this season. I'm going to ask him a few questions of my own, but that should be an interesting one. And we'll have other bits to come as well. And what we're going to do is we'll launch the Brunton Bugle end of season awards votes soon, won't we? So
Yeah,
we'll decide some of the votes ourselves in terms of who gets the awards, but we'll open up the Player of the Year one at the very least to the fans. I think it's fair.
We've got plenty to keep going through May, put it like that.
Yeah, and then I think in June we'll probably do the odd episode. Yeah,
we can probably do those specials of our best 11s and that just to.
Yeah. Yep, definitely.
Yes, and then come July we'll have fixtures out and signings starting to be made and ready to go again.
Yeah, exciting times indeed. So yeah, that's it for this week, Dan. Thanks for joining me. If you've got any comments or feedback or anything you'd like to suggest we discuss, please send them in via Twitter to @BruntonBugle or by email to bruntonbugle@gmail.com, or you can find us on our Facebook page. Just search for Brunton Bugle on Facebook and like the page. If you haven't already, remember you can subscribe via all good podcast apps, including Acast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. Please do also give us a review. Again, we've had some really brilliant ones in there. Really, really do appreciate that. In terms of the World Mapper listeners, we've got a new country, haven't we, Dan?
We do.
We're big in Africa again. We're in the Gambia. Yes, that's right, the Gambia. Oh, never forget the. It's the only country, isn't it, with the in the actual name.
Do we have Banjul Blues?
You'd hope so, wouldn't you? But there you go. So yeah, that's the one new country this week. What we'll do as well in one of those specials, we'll go through. In fact, maybe next week we'll go through the list of all the countries where people are listening, just to say a big thank you to all you blues out there across the globe. We've covered every continent, haven't we, this year?
Yeah,
fantastic, isn't it? Really, to see how it must be so close into 50 odd countries. I think we've had listening now. So fantastic. Really do appreciate that. Dan, thanks for joining me again. I think it'll be all three of us next week, right? I think Mike's going to try and join us.
I think so, yeah.
Should be good on that. Thanks everyone for listening, and enjoy the final game if you can. Hopefully it'll be an entertaining opening and contest, but we'll have to wait and see. Cheers everyone, and up the Blues.
Up the Blues.
Every time